I had left school. I went to go work for Howard Stern. I just felt like I was all over the place. I was screenwriting, I was acting, I was stand-up. I was all over the place, and I felt like I needed to get a little bit more serious about just one specific thing because I had so many interests, and it probably was bad. I probably would have been better off just saying I want to do one thing and that's it. But I had all these interests, and it took me off my path. So when I went to Northwestern, I was a little older. I had real world experience. I had already interned. I had already written scripts. I had already worked behind the scenes. I had known all these things. So I really came with a deep appreciation for learning.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Film Goals Podcast. Today, I'm with the one and only Mike Davis.
What's up, everybody?
Thanks for being on the podcast, man.
I'm happy to finally be here. I got sick last time. We were trying to do this.
But we also talked about this like a year ago.
Did we? Yeah.
When I was doing it at my other apartment.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm glad we finally made it. So you're pretty much the face of like a sports network.
Yes. But kind of.
But we talked about like your beginnings in like filmmaking and screenwriting and stuff. So like I wanna learn about all that. So let's start with like the beginning of your journey. Like what made you want to get into like screenwriting at first?
It's fascinating because I'm taking a look at all your influences, and we have a lot of the same influences. I'm staring at a Django Unchained poster. I love Tarantino. Inglourious Basterds and Django are my two favorites. But nice. It's weird. At a very young age, I knew I wanted to be a talk show host. So in fourth grade, I knew that. But along the way, I definitely was influenced and had a lot of periods where I got drawn to screenwriting, acting, stand-up comedy, all different things. So ultimately, I always wanted to be a talk show host, but I still think even to this day, a big part of me would like to be a screenwriter, a director, those types of things. I've always been drawn to that. And I think how maybe a lot of people who are really good with music and can play the guitar or play piano, maybe they process emotions and sensitive things through music. And me, I process a lot of my stuff through writing. And so that's kind of like why I really loved it in the beginning. A lot of it was just I was writing stuff that was going on in my life, and I was doing stand-up, and all of a sudden I'm in film. I was in, film TV school and at University of Miami, and a bunch of people were like, yo, you're pretty good at stand-up. Why not you write some scripts? Why not you actually act? Why not you do some of these things? And I started writing. And I won some festivals. So it just kind of, it started out of kind of just interest and love.
So TV show host when you're 4 years old. That's crazy.
Fourth grade.
Fourth grade. Oh,
fourth
okay.
Grade is when I was like, I want to be like David Letterman. I want to be like
Okay. And what was that influence? Was that the influence? Watching those people?
Yeah, watching, David Letterman, Howard Stern, a lot of sports guys, a local sports guy in Philadelphia, Angelo Cataldi. So those were probably my biggest influences when I was really young. And then as I got older, guys like Colin Cowherd, guys, more in that sports kind of vein became really influential to me. Bill Simmons. So, I think, I'm sure it's the same with you. I'm 33 now. You go through life. You have the goals. This is the Film Goals podcast, So, you have goals and, you evolve and things change, So at periods of my life, I was being very creative, doing the stand-up, doing the screenwriting, and I still have a lot of these things that I want to accomplish. But as you get older, it gets harder to be really good at a lot of things. Yeah. And a lot of times I question whether I was actually good at stand-up or good at screenwriting, or whether it was just a love, and it didn't matter if I was good or bad. I just wanted to do it for myself.
What made you get into stand-up?
Stand-up was because David Letterman and a lot of my influences started doing stand-up. So Letterman was a talk show host. He was a weatherman. He had practiced stand-up. So he did a little bit of everything, and I felt like for me to get to where I wanted to become, that was going to be a good skill to have and something that I could start off by doing, because I never really wanted to be like an anchor. I wanted to always be more of like a talk show host with personality, and kind of that's how I viewed things. So stand-up I felt would be a good way for me to get there. So stand-up was the springboard. I started that in high school, and then from there I really got more into screenwriting and journalism and all that.
How did you, like when you were in high school, how did you find out like, okay, this is the steps I got to take? Because when I was in high school, I didn't know shit, bro. Like I didn't know like I know I loved movies, but I didn't know like, okay, how do I even get to that place? For you, like how do you even know like how to get to a host or whatever?
That's the hardest part, is like you know, and I think a lot of times people get really fixated on the concept of like Nepo babies, right? Like, and they're just famous because their parents were famous or something. I think a lot of times it's not even about that, because I think a lot of Nepo babies are talented, you know, and they have those genes and they have things going for themselves. I think a lot of it in life is just being the mystique of things. When you don't know anybody that's a film director, an actor, you're so far removed from that in your life, you feel like you can't even attain these goals because you don't, there's a mystique around it. You're like, you don't know anybody who's doing it. So for me, I didn't really have so much of a guideline. It's not like a traditional path. Like, okay, you become a lawyer, you go to law school. Like, I had no clue how I was going to accomplish it. The only thing I had going for myself was that I knew a couple people at home that had talk shows. So there's this guy, that Angelo Cataldi, who had a sports radio talk show. My dad was a guest on it a couple times. So like I kind of on the fringe kind of just saw that it's something that people could do.
Right.
But I had no clue how I was going to make it happen. You know?
Yeah, because your journey is kind of like, you know, stand up and then this other thing and this other thing.
So you kind of just throw stuff against the wall and you see what sticks. But I do think seeing is believing. So just knowing one person who actually is doing it makes it a lot more achievable in your mind, because you're like, okay, I see somebody who's doing this. It's not just like so far out of reach and out of grasp where you feel like you can't even attain it. So just having somebody that I looked up to that was so good, and wasn't David Letterman, and wasn't Howard Stern, but Angelo Cataldi, this guy who I could look up to and think, wow, this guy is so talented. He's so funny, so smart, so interesting and engaging. And the fact that I met him, and I can show you a picture of me with him, like, and just having known him a little bit, and he's still a mentor to me to this day, is a really cool thing. And I think that propelled me.
That's awesome. So let's talk about the screenwriting stuff. So you went to University of
Miami undergrad, yeah.
Okay, and then you got to do some cool stuff with that filmmaking journey too.
Yeah,
so let's talk about it.
So, you know, I always was good at writing. I'm still bad at math. I'm still bad at a lot of things. Writing just came easier to me, and I always liked English class and all that stuff. So I had, you know, people that I looked up to, screenwriters and films. I was always a junkie with movies and stuff and TV. And I was in the film and television school, and you're taking broadcast journalism classes. You're doing a little bit of everything. And I basically took a screenwriting class, and I really enjoyed it. I loved the process of just writing and coming up with characters, and I was really good at dialogue. Story and plot was hard for me. Okay. So I read all the books, and I had good professors. One of my professors is a famous dude named Tom Muska. He wrote Stand and Deliver, which is a big movie, and had a bunch of other films with Paul Rodriguez. So I'm in the film school, and I'm doing stand-up, and I'm performing at the Miami Improv, and people in the film school are starting to get wind of this young dude named Mike Davis, who is kind of funny and quirky, and people are starting to suggest that I write screenplays for short films, because some of these people are developing their craft. They're making short films. They're in these classes. So I never wanted to be a director at that point, because I wasn't so into the technical stuff. Like, you're good with cameras, you're good with editing. It took me years to get more interested in that. I just kind of liked
the
story stuff and the dialogue. So I wrote a screenplay and basically had this teammate who was a producer director, and it was very Woody Allen-esque. It was called The Check, kind of like when you go to a restaurant, you get the check, right? And my concept was these short films are 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 minutes long, right? So you can't tell, you got to be able to tell a good story in a short amount of time. And I had a very like Woody Allen type of, I don't know, the types of characters I wrote were very verbose, talkative, even Tarantino-ish, you know, were those influences where people are, it's snappy dialogue and it's like a lot of stuff going on, but not a lot of action. You're just like sitting down. So I had a moleskin notebook and I would come up with ideas all day long, whether it was stand-up related, whether it was movies. And I had this concept for a short film where two couples are out to dinner. And they, you know how like you'd be out to dinner and people are fighting over paying the check because they want to like, you know, show off in front of their girlfriend or whatever, something like that. So I figured, what if there's two young couples that are out on a date, and just to be like gracious, you know, you're always like, oh, like, let me take care of it or to show off. Well, I figured, what if it got to the degree that these people got into like a fist fight because they were so prideful that they were going to fight the person to the death. So, and it's like these two great couples, and the actors were actually tremendous. This guy, Adam Maggio, was just so funny. And it turns into this whole thing, and it's good. And so anyway, it ends up winning this film festival. And it was like kind of produced not to the highest degree. Like, it was okay, well done, but there was issues with sound. There was a lot of things wrong with it. And it beat out some other short films that literally looked like Michael Bay directed them. Like, it was crazy. I remember being in the I forget what the name of the movie theater was, but it was on campus at University of Miami. And, you know, when you see your writing come to life for the first time, it's a magical, it's almost like sex, you know, it's like a magical experience. Like, I don't know, it's just something. And, you know, nowadays we barely even go to the movie theaters anymore, but there's something so special. Like, this is 2014, or I mean, 2010, 2011, 2012 probably. And dude, like, seeing it play and hearing people laugh at what you wrote and like play out in real time, it was so intoxicating. And we ended up winning, and I couldn't believe it. And it just reinforced my writing so much more. And then I started writing all these other things. I had this great movie I wrote that was a short film. It's just like very Adam Sandler-y, Will Ferrell stuff. That's the stuff I like. But it's called Clogged, and it's about a guy who goes over his girlfriend's house, her parents' house, for the first time ever for dinner. And he's so nervous, and he wants to make a great impression, and he clogs her toilet. And all the stuff that he goes through to just, you know, make pretend like he didn't, you know, clog this toilet. So he's like calling in a plumber. He's like all this stuff, and he's like locked in the bathroom trying to solve the situation. But so there was a bunch of these little things that I constantly did, and then it ultimately got to the point where I was able to write a couple features that got made, and it was pretty cool. And it was nothing amazing, you know, but it was, to see something come to life is really special, you know, and I think it's such an intoxicating thing. So I still kind of yearn for those opportunities, and I'd love to do that again one day. But you learn a lot through your mistakes, you know.
Yeah. How involved were you when shooting happened? Were you able to go to set and see all that?
Yeah, so a couple things, like for the feature that I wrote, it was shot in Greece, and basically there were all these tax incentives to shoot a feature film in Greece.
Yeah.
So all that I had when the producers told me, they're like, would you want to write this screenplay? And I was like, 100%. And they're like, okay, write whatever you want. It just has to take place in Greece, and it has to be at these 7 islands. It's got to be at Samos, Syros, Mykonos, Santorini, Athens, and maybe one more. It's like that was it or something. And I did all this research, and I just wrote a movie. And I was actually working at Howard Stern at the time, so I didn't get to go on set for that. But for most of the short films, I was on set, and a couple of them I even like acted in too. And I probably should have been a little bit more confident in my acting, because there were so many people that I wrote characters for, where I was always writing about me.
Yourself.
You know, I was always writing my anxiety, the way I would feel in those situations. And that's why I love the therapeutic nature of screenwriting. Like, it really didn't matter so much. Like, of course I wanted people to like it, but it was like a process for me to process emotions.
Wow.
You know, so then when like an actor wouldn't nail it, I did get very upset, because I was like, man, like that's not how it's supposed to be. But then there are actors who really do nail it, and it just brings so much joy to see somebody execute it. So, you know, I learned a lot. I learned a lot about that.
That's pretty dope. So I remember you mentioning, before we talk about Howard Stern, like you mentioned James Cameron. Was it James Cameron?
Yeah. So
you got to do something where
I ended up. So after winning that short film festival, I started entering a lot of things, and I ended up winning a film festival where I wrote a pilot for a TV show. It was a sitcom, and I won the screenwriting competition for this film festival at the University of Miami, and it was a big deal. And like 10 students who all won in their respective categories got flown out to LA, and we like went on this whole tour where we took meetings with people. We went to Lightstorm Studios, which was James Cameron's production company, with a producer named John Landau, who rest in peace, who passed away. He was a great guy. And John was very involved with the communication school at the University of Miami. So we like saw Avatar 2, like pieces of it before like anybody even knew it was happening. And it was like a really cool experience. We saw these sets and amazing set pieces and things. And so, you know, I lived that life a little bit, and I had a little bit of juice as a young guy. And I went to work in LA, and I was working as a intern at Montecito Picture Company, which was a company founded by Ivan Reitman, who directed like Twins with Arnold Schwarzenegger, a lot of like Ghostbusters, like a lot of those types of films, Bill Murray, like Meatballs, like different types of movies like that. And so I kind of had this juice, and I was feeling myself. But you start learning in LA, everybody's got a screenplay. Everybody's trying to make something happen. And yeah. It was an interesting time, and I was living in Westwood, and so I was really in love and infatuated with the whole notion of going to LA and going to Hollywood and making something happen. And but ultimately, the talk show stuff was always going to be my thing. And I one day would like to maybe still be in this world and see something happen. But I definitely learned a lot about what you shouldn't do when you're doing a short film, a feature film. And there's a lot of ego stuff involved.
Yeah. A
lot of people who probably shouldn't be directors, but they want the title of being a director. Or a lot of times where you think, I should, direct this and act in it, or I should, and it's just too hard. And that's what's so beautiful about filmmaking. It's a team sport, and it's exactly like athletics. It's like, to make a great film, it takes so many amazing people coming together, and it's such a great journey and experience, because you're hanging out with people, you're enjoying being on set and just all those things that we love. But at the end of the day, you have to know where your strengths are. And I think I probably would be just maybe a character actor and mainly a screenwriter who shouldn't be involved, and maybe produce a little bit, but definitely not a director.
Okay, that's cool. And how did you transition into like Howard Stern? Was that now that you wanted to be like following that host?
Yeah, so I always wanted to work there, and I was in the film school, I was in the radio, TV, doing all that stuff in college, and I got this opportunity to move to LA and become his intern. And so I really knew nothing about the situation besides the fact that I just listened to the show every day and was obsessed with Howard. And when I ultimately went there, it was a great learning experience, and it kind of set me on a little bit of a track of understanding how a show of that magnitude works. Mm-hmm. And like looking around at your set here, like there was, I was just doing so much. It was such a crazy time because I had left school. I was working for him. I'm getting his breakfast. I'm getting his coffee. And then all these celebrities would come in, and, Bryan Cranston would come in, and, I'd have to, get whatever he wanted. And, Harvey Weinstein came. I mean, like, I met everybody, dude. It was like insane. And,
was it still the crazy times at Howard, or was he more like chill?
He was a little more chill at this point. So it was a different thing, but he's like such a great interviewer, and he's the master. And it was so fascinating to meet these people and just be a part of the process. And part of what I loved was, I really learned from him in terms of helping, because I would put together his, like, okay, for instance, Bryan Cranston comes on the show, Pharrell Williams comes on the show, Neil Young, whoever it is. I would be part of the process after I got his coffee, after I got his lunch, after I did all those things. If I got done those tasks that were those internee type of gigs, I would then be a part of compiling and doing research on guests. They call it guest research. So I would come up with all these nuggets of information, put it in a packet, send it along to a producer, and then that producer would send those notes to Howard Stern. And then I'd always be intrigued to listen back to the interview and hear the stuff that I researched that would make the interview or wouldn't make the interview. And a lot of times, I would say like, oh, okay, like I put that in the packet. Like, it's cool that made the show. So it kind of taught me preparation, and it taught me, okay, Howard is going to like study probably for 2 hours on a guest. Maybe, I don't know how exactly he would do it, but he's getting a packet of like 15 pages of notes. Mm-hmm. That's a lot of information to do in preparation for a guest, and then to see what he would use, what he wouldn't use. It's interesting.
So after Howard Stern, you're pursuing your talk show host journey, right? Right.
So at Howard Stern, I go then work for the NFL Network as a producer, NFL Films. So I was a guy who'd work in their production team and rate clips, basically. Like, we all remember, like, Saquon this year had that like Matrix level move where he spun backwards, like almost in slow motion, and the guy is trying to tackle him and he's like leaping over him backwards, twisting. Like, I would go through clips and grade them. And it would be like almost like a filing system online where they could have all this game footage, whether it was Barry Sanders or Saquon Barkley, and I would grade the clips. And that's kind of what I did for a couple of years. While I was doing that, I was still doing stand-up, and that's when I started acting even more in those commercials, like the BlackBerry commercial. Yeah. And so I was doing a bunch of stuff, and I was auditioning, and I'd be in a music video that I sent you, where I was in a weird it was like a commercial for like a bed sheet that was like an intimacy bed sheet game where it's like supposed to spark intimacy in the bedroom with your partner. So like I was doing commercial work, and then I booked the BlackBerry commercial, which was a big one. And so I was doing all this at the same time, and then I ultimately went back to grad school, went to Northwestern, and got my master's degree. And that's when I really perfected, not perfected, but that's where I got my training in journalism and really learned stuff about the process and being, really taking it 100% seriously. Mm-hmm. And then from there, I became a talk show host in Texas for a morning show. Then I had a talk show at night in Texas. And then I came to Vegas for Fox 5.
Wow, that's crazy, dude.
So it feels like forever ago.
And why did you go to get your master's? Because of journalism, or
I just felt like I was I felt like I missed out on a lot of stuff in undergrad because I was so focused on stand-up. I had left school. I went to go work for Howard Stern. I just felt like I was all over the place. I was screenwriting. I was acting. I was stand-up. I was all over the place. And I felt like I needed to get a little bit more serious about just one specific thing because I had so many interests. And it probably was bad. I probably would have been better off just saying I want to do one thing and that's it. But I had all these interests and it took me off my path. So when I went to Northwestern, I was a little older. I had real world experience. I had already interned. I had already written scripts. I had already worked behind the scenes. I had known all these things. So I really came with a deep appreciation for learning. You know, we take education for granted. And when you are a little older and you've worked in the world and you go back to school at like 24 and you're like, hey, like I really want to do this, and you feel proud to be in that classroom. And you know, and I wasn't super smart, so I was like, wow, how did I get into this school? Like I was just like really grateful to be there, and I took the time really seriously. And it was just a really beautiful time in my life. I love Chicago. I love Northwestern. I was living in Evanston, and I really got good at being an on-air personality. Was I the best journalist in the school? No. There's a lot of people much smarter than me, but I understood. I learned the craft. I learned how to be a true journalist, the things to do, the things not to do, and I was able to kind of find my niche, you know? So the big thing was like a lot of people there were, you know, their sensibilities were more about hard news. You know, like at Fox 5, there's a lot of people that love hard news, right? Yeah. A murder happens, a fire, like that's what gets them excited.
Investigative stuff, yeah.
Right. I always was never interested. So like these people at Northwestern, that would be their sensibility. They'd be like, there'd be a Trump protest. There'd be like, crazy things happening in the world. And like, let's go do the dirty investigative work. Yeah. My pitches would be like, yo, it's National Cinnabon Day. Like, can we go like learn how to make a Cinnabon and like, you know, eat a Cinnabon on air and like be funny and stuff. So, you know, some professors loved that. Some professors hated that. Yeah. And, you know, but it was a great learning experience because I really learned who I am as an on-air personality. Like I was able to kind of create a voice, you know, and that's why, like, if we're thinking about filmmakers, so many of the best filmmakers, they have a voice. You watch a Tarantino movie and you know it's Tarantino. Right. Because he's got such a distinct style. I kind of was working on that, and it's like in stand-up I always had a hard time figuring out who I was. I'd go on stage, some days I'd be like Jerry Seinfeld, some days I'd try to be Chris Rock, and I couldn't figure out who I was. With TV it came very quickly. I was able to understand, okay, this is who I am. And like when I was on the Moore Show every day, like I think it was very natural for me because I just knew, okay, like Mike Davis doing this segment is going to be this way, right? You know, and I couldn't figure that out with stand-up, and that's a big regret of mine. And I don't know if I spent more time doing it, would I have gotten better? Perhaps.
How long did you do it for?
Probably about, and I still do it here and there now. Like I've performed here in Vegas a little bit, but I don't, you know. If I took it seriously, I'm curious if I would have ever developed it. But I started at like 17, and I probably did it hardcore for about 5 years. Okay.
So you probably have 5 more years to go to find that.
Maybe, you know, but certain things in life come quicker. So I don't know, you know, and I just knew that I was never going to be incredible at it just because it's so hard. So, you know, it's in life. That's the thing. It's like you have to be, you know, same thing with screenwriting. Maybe if I just focused on screenwriting and just did who knows?
I mean, you got pretty far though. Like being able to win stuff.
Not really that far.
I mean, to win stuff and then to like go to these different like places, you know.
Yeah, it was cool.
But, yeah.
But I think the TV thing was way more easy. Like,
Yeah.
it was what I always wanted to do since 4th grade, and it just came to me easy.
Yeah.
So
and you were not afraid. Like, what I remember a lot from you and more is that you're not afraid to like do shit. I mean, like, you know, you got dressed as a bride and did some like crazy. Like, that's the one that I remind like I see in my head right now.
A wedding dress. Like, I would do crazy stuff, and I think a lot of it is just committing. You know, it's like I always was influenced by like Jim Carrey or, you know, Adam Sandler or Ben Stiller, like these geniuses who are just. Comedy is so much about being serious. Like, that's what people don't get, but that's why great comedic actors are tremendous dramatic actors. Like, if you see, you know, Jim Carrey in Eternal, you know,
Eternal Sunshine,
right, or if you see Adam Sandler in Uncut Gems or Punch Drunk Love by P.T. Anderson, like, these are guys who are really tremendous dramatic actors. You know,
they commit to it,
and they commit, and it's just because they like Jim Carrey. Just like think about the things that he would do as the Mask or Ace Ventura. I mean, it's really hard acting. You know, like people think it's just a joke, but it's like hard to be. Or Will Ferrell is a tremendous actor. If you've seen him in like. Stranger Than Fiction, you know, but even in Step Brothers, like to be a 40-something, 50-year-old
you
man,
gotta sell it,
you know, like, so I definitely have a little bit of that in me, and I wish I took acting more seriously when I was younger, and I probably should have done improv more than stand-up, because I think I have that ability to like commit to a weird degree. And that's what I loved about being on More and doing live shots on TV, is that it's like acting. It's like you're so present. You know, like in life, we have so many things on our mind that we're constantly worried about, right? We're worried about what we're going to eat for dinner, asking a girl out, or whatever it is. We got so many, you know, paying the bills, whatever's going on. But like when you're so present, on live TV, and it's like you can't think about anything else because you're wearing a dress on live TV. Like there's something like so beautiful about that, because there's time stops, you know. And I have like a lot of, you know, I think being Jewish and just my culture, it's like you just are born with anxiety, you know, and you're just like constantly thinking about, you know, over analyzing things, intellectualizing things way too much. So for me, it was like a haven to like, it sounds weird, but like dressing up as Snow White on TV, like, kind of like was therapeutic for me, because it was very like, it was a time where it's like, in order to pull this off, you're going to have to be 100% committed and in the moment. And I just love that. And I think people, you know, once again, am I the greatest journalist on earth? Hell no. But I think a lot of people would say, hey, Mike's like going to have fun and he's going to put himself in a weird position, and he doesn't, you know, he doesn't take life so seriously.
That's cool, man. So before we wrap it up, you are now like doing sports full time.
Yeah.
Are you at a place where you wanted to be when you were in 4th grade? Is sports like the thing that you wanted to talk about, or entertainment? What was it?
It was both. I love sports. Sports was definitely my first love, you know. Okay. So I used to like collect like Sports Illustrated magazine, Sports Illustrated for Kids, Slam magazine. Like
I was gonna say they had that.
Yeah, like it was crazy. Like I was obsessed. So I always wanted to do that. And if I, you know, if I could talk to myself now, like if I was able to, if myself back then was able to see myself now, like I wouldn't even be able to comprehend this. Yeah. But so I'm so grateful and fortunate. And you know, you don't like my parents and my brother and my family and, you know, so many friends and mentors, like you're a product of people around you and your support system. So I don't even think I'd be anywhere close to where I am today without those people in my life. And they gave me so much confidence and support, emotional. And so it is a real blessing. But, you know, it's interesting because a lot of people ask me, like, you know, if you loved dressing up so much, and, like as Snow White or as a, you know, being crazy on TV with More, why did you
go to sports?
And I just think I needed a new challenge. I've been here in Vegas. It's going to be 6 years soon. And I I got to the point where I felt like I had done everything like already 2 or 3 times. Like I just didn't know what I could do anymore to make it different, you know? And I was starting to get a little, you know, I didn't want to get to the point where I was going to become resentful because it wasn't fun for me anymore, you know? And I think the one thing that I've always prided myself on is that, like, hopefully when somebody's watching me, they can see that I'm having as much fun as they are. And that's, I think, why people enjoyed it so much. So once it started getting to the point where I wasn't enjoying myself to the same degree, and I felt like a lot of that's just needing a new challenge, you know, things getting old after you've done it 2 or 3 times. Like, I just felt like I need to challenge myself in a new way. And that's where the sports opportunity and having, you know, the opportunity to launch a brand new sports network, Silver State Sports and Entertainment Network, be the face of that, be the first ever employee of that, and kind of usher in a new generation of talk shows that are driven by sports and they have entertaining qualities. I just thought it was like a perfect move, especially with how big sports has become here in Las Vegas.
Vegas is crazy,
Like when I moved here, you didn't have the Raiders. You know, it was basically, you know, like the Aces weren't winning championships yet. The Athletics weren't on their way yet. And even just like you didn't have F1 happening and all these things. Now it's like F1, WrestleMania, like everything.
Even like minor league stuff, all the minor league stuff you guys talk about.
So I just felt like, okay, this is like a great opportunity. We had the draft here. We had the Super Bowl here. So there's so much happening in the sports world. We've already been the entertainment capital of the world. Now we're getting to the point where we're becoming the sports capital of the world. This is a great time to make this transition and see what we can accomplish.
Yeah, it's about timing. You know? The timing was there. All right, man. Well, thanks for being on the podcast, bro. It's a long journey, man.
It's a long journey.
It's cool though to like hear your story, like, you know, finally. So.
Yeah. What can I ask a couple questions to you?
Oh man, yeah. Now I'm on the other seat, bro. Go ahead.
Well, okay, because I'm seeing all the influences here. So, give me your favorite drama movie of all time and your favorite comedy movie of all time.
Drama. The comedy is probably easier, I guess. I mean, is Pulp Fiction considered a comedy?
I'd say more drama.
As a comedy drama.
Yeah.
Damn.
Is Pulp Fiction your favorite movie of all time?
Pulp Fiction and Kill Bill are like my tied for number 1.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
When the first time I saw Kill Bill, I was like blown away. I had to rewatch it. That was the first movie that I rewatched.
Right back to back?
Right back to back. Yeah.
Wait. You watched Kill Bill?
Yeah.
Like all the way through?
Well, only volume 1.
Right.
So I watched
volume 1, and then right when it ended,
I rewinded it. And that's like...
And you watched it full
And I watched it again. Yeah. Well, at first I rewinded it to watch the Crazy 88 part. I was
Did you like it as
insane.
much the second time as you did the first time?
Yeah.
You did? More? Did it make you appreciate it more or no?
Yeah, I caught different things. Like every time you see it. But yeah, that was the first time that happened. But Pulp Fiction was always, as I watched it when I was younger. I remember watching it as a kid and I didn't even understand it. But there was things that I liked, right? And then I watched it as an adult. And then I understood every reference and the jokes and everything. So that was always that's why it's always tied. My favorite comedy is probably like The Waterboy, just because nostalgia.
Really, yeah, Adam Sandler stuff, yeah.
And then favorite drama, damn, that's a hard one because there's so many good ones.
So Tarantino is your favorite director by far.
Yeah. Damn, I'd have to come back to the drama one. I have to think about it.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm just like, I wish Tarantino would do more movies and stuff. Like,
I feel like he's gonna move into TV shows. Like he'll go into TV.
I want him to do anything.
Or novels. He'll write novels. Because I don't know if it's true, but I just heard that he wrote another script for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
And Fincher is going to direct it. Yeah,
so
I love Fincher too. I love Fincher as well.
I love Gone Girl. So Gone Girl is like one of my top dramas.
Yeah. And Social Network is great. He did that as well.
Oh, he directed that too. Yeah.
Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, which I love the books. That was pretty great as well. He's got a really great style as well. Zodiac, he did.
Yeah, Zodiac, yeah.
Seven, right. Yeah. So, I mean, that's going to be fascinating to see his words, but Fincher directing it is going to be cool.
All right, man. Yeah, I'm gonna think about that question, and I'll come back to you.
Okay.
All right, man. Thanks for being on the pod.
Of course.
You guys can catch him on Silver State Sports Entertainment, like every day.
Yeah, we got.
So if you want to watch them,
go check us out. Go to our YouTube. It's great to go to our YouTube for. It's called Silver State Sports, and we got Sin City Beat, Sound Off Sports, our NBA G League Takeover show. We got the Fantasy Goat. Like we're doing like 4 or 5 shows. We got more shows coming. Like so, it's fun. It's loose. It's kind of like that intersection of pop culture and like we still have like entertainment type of people on, but it's that intersection of pop culture, sports. It's good stuff. And my my good buddy, one of my best friends, my producer, my co-host, James Edward Barrickman IV. We say his full name on our shows. He's my teammate. He's with me. So you guys are going to enjoy him a lot as well.
All right. We'll see you next time.
Thanks,
Peace.
Angel.